For coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Switch gears, and it's been a while since we've done a college football transfer portal update. Now, the reason why has been pretty straightforward. It's been a quiet couple days, both for me, kind of from the recording side of things, but also from the recruiting side of things as well. We're actually in the middle of a recruiting dead period. Players are not allowed to visit campuses. In theory, coaches are not supposed to be communicating with players, but we know that's not how it really works. And over the last couple days, we have had a couple big commitments, a couple new players enter, and most significantly, some really important players that are in the portal, and we're starting to get some buzz on where they may end up. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I know it's been a while since we've done one of these because we haven't talked about Walter Nolen committing to freaking Ole Miss, okay? So if you somehow missed this, on Christmas Eve day, so the 24th, almost a week ago now, Walter Nolen, the number one player in the portal, in my opinion, committed to Ole Miss. There is no other way to put it other than that this is huge, both literally and figuratively. Walter Nolen was the number 2 player in the high school class of 2022, behind only Travis Hunter. Goes to A&M for 2 years, and while I know a lot of guys have not lived up to expectations at A&M, you can't say that Walter Nolen wasn't a stud while he was there. 8.5 TFLs this year, 4 sacks, 290 pounds. He's playing on the inside. He's playing more to the outside. But the bottom line is this kid has been as good as advertised. And when he entered the portal, you expected all the really big names to get in the mix. Visits Oregon, ends up committing to Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Couple quick thoughts here. One, it's an unbelievably huge commitment for Ole Miss. And I will say, I do think it's kind of funny from this perspective. I think it's funny because if you remember, when NIL first became a thing, and that 2022 recruiting class, who was the guy that was most vocal about Texas A&M doing some things that he thought were unscrupulous, not quite right, not very good? It was Lane freaking Kiffin. He was the one that said that Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M needed a salary cap because nobody else could compete. And so it's funny that, one, he got maybe the most high-profile player out of that class to Ole Miss, but two, it is clear that in a credit to Lane Kiffin, under the current rules of NIL, he has rallied that fan base, and he has done a really good job restocking through the portal. And right now, Ole Miss has the number 1 portal class in America. You go ahead and look. That portal class is unbelievable. Walter Nolen, number 1 defensive lineman in the class. Tyler Barron, who was the best defensive lineman at Tennessee. How about that? Lane Kiffin sticking it to his former school. You have a situation where Juice Wells, maybe the top wide receiver in the portal. I'd put him number 2 behind Will Shepard, who committed to Colorado. But Juice Wells is going to Ole Miss. You had the edge rusher from Florida going to Ole Miss. And so when I look at what Lane Kiffin has done, something stands out to me. We are, first of all, top, I think he's like final college football playoff poll. I think Ole Miss was 10 or 11. But I bring it up because as we go to a 12-team playoff next year, I think Ole Miss is really ramping up to have a team that is good enough to get there and potentially win games. Now, are they going to be better than Bama or Georgia on opening day next year? I don't know. But what I do know is you don't have to be next year. It's a 12-team playoff. I think Ole Miss is going to be really good. Jackson Dart, their quarterback, is going to be back. They have a lot of talent on the edges at wide receiver, at running back with Quinshawn Judkins. Credit Lane Kiffin for the biggest portal win of the offseason so far. I want to go, I'll get to some more commitments in a minute, but what I want to do now is switch gears, sort of, because we're going to hit kind of a theme here as we go forward. We just talked Walter Nolen, former 5-star who played 2 years at Texas A&M, and I want to talk about the new best player in the portal right now, Evan Stewart, a former 5-star who played 2 years at Texas A&M. While Walter Nolen was the number 1 defensive lineman in that class, Evan Stewart was the number 1 wide receiver. Comes to Texas A&M. And unfortunately, he got Jimbo'd, okay? That offense was abysmal. It was so bad. Even the last couple weeks when Jimbo Fisher got fired, you could tell they opened it up more. But either way, 53 catches as a freshman 2 seasons ago, 39 catches this year, 4 touchdowns. Now, it's unfortunate. Did get a little banged up. Now, the last game or two, we could call it an opt-out. We could call it whatever. He didn't travel with the team to LSU. Certainly didn't play in a bowl game. But he entered the portal a few weeks ago, and he was a very interesting name to keep an eye on because I would argue, right alongside Walter Nolan, he is probably the best player to enter the portal. What's especially interesting about Evan Stewart is because of how his high school recruitment went, a lot of people thought that it was going to be maybe Texas, who was number 2 in his recruitment. He almost committed to Texas out of high school, or maybe Alabama, which clearly needs help at the wide receiver position. And he also had a great relationship with Alabama out of high school. I bring it up because it doesn't appear as though that's how it's going to happen. Pete Nakos, who does a really good job for On3, basically said those 2 schools right now, as of about 24 hours ago, are not in the Evan Stewart race. The 5 schools that Pete referenced, and I've talked to Pete once or twice, really plugged in guy, sharp kid, etc. He said the 5 schools are Oregon, Ole Miss, USC, Tennessee, and Florida State. Now, what's interesting to me about those schools is 2 things. 1, no Bama, no Texas. But 2, what's also especially interesting is the idea that Evan Stewart is a kid that he has said this in interviews, or it's been inferred in interviews. NIL is not going to be the focus of his decision. What's going to be the focus is as a third-year junior next year, he wants to go someplace where they are going to put the ball in his hands and put him in a position to reach his potential and get drafted, okay? Don't blame him. That's what every high school player's dream is, and a player of his high profile, you'd think that he would want to be a 3 and done, go to college for 3 years, go pro. I bring it up. That list is interesting from this perspective. Ole Miss, okay, makes sense. Oregon with Dylan Gabriel, makes sense. Those other 3 schools, though, USC, Florida State, Tennessee, we don't really know exactly what's going on at quarterback at those schools. USC, obviously Miller Moss had a great bowl game the other day, so maybe they make sense. Maybe if you can sell Evan Stewart that Miller Moss is the guy and you're the number 1 receiver, that's kind of interesting. But I don't know that even Lincoln Riley knows right now if he is going to continue to pursue quarterbacks in the portal, but he has so far. Beyond that, Nico Imamama-Leve. I butchered his name. Obviously, I'm so sorry, Tennessee fans. I'm so sorry, Nico. But the 5-star quarterback, he's getting his first start in the bowl game. But do you want to go to Tennessee and put your career in the hands of a quarterback who will have started 1 game? Same with USC. And then Florida State, it looks like it's either going to be Cam Ward or DJU. And I like DJU. It's not a knock on DJU, but if it's DJU, if it's DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson and Oregon State, I'm just not sure that's the quarterback that I'd want to put my future in if I was Evan Stewart. Not my decision. Don't really care. Whatever he thinks is best for him, I'll support it. Like he needs my support, like he cares, like he knows who I am. But I bring it up to just say, this is a very important decision. I would not go somewhere unless I knew for darn sure who the quarterback was and confident in that quarterback situation. Let's keep it going. A couple other big names in the portal. Domani Jackson, yet another 5-star from the class of 2022. He is a cornerback. Very interesting story with him because he was a player in high school. It looked like it was coming down to Alabama and Michigan. He was the number 1 corner in the class of 2022. So we're noticing a theme here, right? Number 1 defensive lineman, Walter Nolan. Number 1 wide receiver, Evan Stewart. Number 1 cornerback, Domani Jackson. Down to Alabama and Michigan. Then Lincoln Riley gets hired. He's from Southern California. He commits to USC. And obviously it didn't work out because USC's defense was terrible over the last couple years. I might have mentioned it at some point, but I actually remember watching a game that he was playing in. And I remember sitting there saying, I wonder what that kid must be thinking. Thinking he's going to come to USC. They're going to revitalize the program. He's going to be a 3 and done, go pro, whatever. Well, now he's through 2 years. It's not really working out. He enters the portal, and it looks like it's going to come down to Alabama and Michigan. By the time you listen, maybe he'll have committed. Maybe the winner of Alabama, Michigan in the college football playoff will get Domani Jackson on their campus. I don't know. But what I will say is, listen, for this kid, Again, I'm not here to tell kids what they should do or what makes sense, what doesn't. Those are two pretty good schools, though, right? Nick Saban is the greatest defensive backs coach probably in the history of the sport. Jim Harbaugh, if he stays at Michigan, nobody produces more pros. I don't want to say nobody, but few programs produce more pros than Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. So we'll see what happens there. But it appears as though it's those two schools. And obviously, I think it's worth monitoring what happens at Michigan. Because if Jim Harbaugh goes pro, is that a school you want to be tied to? Wonder if that would give Alabama the favorite spot there. A couple other players, KJ Jefferson, quarterback from Arkansas, it appears as though is leaning towards Central Florida. UCF, I think that makes a ton of sense for him. He's kind of a dual threat guy. Gus Malzahn runs a dual threat system. You're in the Big 12. I think he could be really good there. Also worth noting, Nick Scouton, the number one Big Ten player in terms of sacks, led the Big Ten in sacks, 10 this past year. He just entered the portal. He is from right down the road at Texas A&M. You wonder if Texas A&M is in the mix there. And let's quickly wrap with some commitments since the last time we spoke. The first one, listen, I keep saying it. Everybody wants to criticize Torres. You talk about Coach Prime too much. You talk about Deion too much. He's bringing in a lot of talent through the portal. The most recent, DJ Lundy, a linebacker from Florida State, who had 52 tackles this year, was one of their best defensive players. And so, look, I will tell you about Deion, about Coach Prime, what I keep saying. I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict the future. If I could, I'd be in Vegas, putting my money on red and black and getting rich. But why I bring it up is because while last year I felt like he was just taking bodies to fill out a roster, now you can blame him. He ran off all the other guys, so he had to take in a bunch of new guys. I bring it up because of the fact that this year, he's getting guys that everybody wants. Will Shepard, wide receiver, Vanderbilt. DJ Lundy, linebacker, Florida State. The Wade kid, Keaton Wade from Kentucky, linebacker, now at Colorado. Quincy Wiggins, defensive lineman from LSU, now at Colorado. The backup quarterback from Vandy, now at Colorado. You go on and on down the list. He's getting guys that other people want. Khalil Benson, the offensive lineman from Indiana, now at Colorado. So we will see how it plays out. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to put a win total on them just yet. But remember, year 1 to year 2 at Jackson State, he went from 4-3 to 11-2. Do I think they're winning 11 games next year? Probably not. Do I think they're probably going to again be better than people are going to give them credit for? I do. Coach Prime picks up a linebacker, DJ Lundy, and I'll tell you what, he ain't done yet either, because did you see the tweet that he sent out the other day? Let me see if I can pull it up really quick, where he talks about Santa coming extra. This is what he said on December 26th. He said, dang, I saw the portal doing the backhead bounce. Just when I thought Santa was on his way back to the North Pole, he dipped off. Santa, please drop off another defensive tackle, cornerback, linebacker, and one more pass rusher to Boulder. I believe, Santa. I believe. So I just bring it up because, he's going out and trying to get more players. There is going to be more big news, and Colorado's going to keep getting players. But I keep saying it. Criticize Deion Sanders. Criticize Coach Prime all you want. He's bringing in real ball players to Colorado. I think they're going to be better next year than people expect. Speaking of better next year than people expect, let's close with this. Missouri added Chris McClellan, defensive lineman from Florida. Missouri's another team like Ole Miss. They're doing really well in the portal, really taking advantage of a good season on the field. They got the Pride, the cornerback from Clemson, Pride. I'm blanking on his first name. They also got, as I'm tripping over my own words here, they've gotten a couple other really nice players out of the portal. Caden Green, the former 5-star offensive lineman who played at Oklahoma. Toriano Pride. Toriano Pride was the kid's name. I don't know why I couldn't remember his name. I just bring it up because Missouri, much like Ole Miss, I think they're starting to make major moves.